David Williams, a quiet film archivist, works in the Dublin Film Archive, meticulously cataloguing old reels. His life feels ordinary but slightly monotonous, overshadowed by tension at home with his wife, Alice, and their young son Billy. One day, David is handed a 16mm reel by a colleague, a film that will change everything. As he sets it up, flickering images of a house he immediately recognizes appear on the screen. The footage, dated 1902, shows a man brutally murdering his family inside what is now David's own home. The shock overwhelms him. The horrifying details, the exact layout of his living room, and the terror on the victims' faces make him question reality. He rewinds and replays the reel multiple times, trying to understand how this could be connected to his own life. David begins taking photographs of the film frames, attempting to preserve the haunting images. Each frame seems to whisper secrets from the past, and the weight of history presses on him. His sense of security erodes, replaced by unease and creeping paranoia. Even in mundane tasks, preparing dinner or helping Billy with homework, David sees glimpses of the past, shadows that make him jump. The film has planted a seed of obsession, and David feels compelled to uncover the full story behind the murder, unaware that the events will soon mirror his own life. After the unsettling discovery of the 1902 murder footage, David's mind is restless. A growing suspicion toward his wife, Alice, begins to consume him. One evening, Alice tells David she is working late, but something in her tone makes him uneasy. Unable to contain his anxiety, David follows her through the dim streets of Dublin, keeping to the shadows. He watches her enter a small cafe, where she meets a man he doesn't recognize. David's heart pounds as he observes their conversation, noticing brief touches and shared laughter that fuel his suspicions. His imagination amplifies every gesture, and he becomes convinced that Alice is having an affair. One night, after an argument with Alice, he walks along the quiet streets near the canal, trying to calm his mind. He stops at a small, dimly lit public toilet, seeking solitude and a brief moment of privacy. As he enters, the air feels cold, unusually still. Alone, he hears faint whispering that seems to come from nowhere. At first, he convinces himself it is his imagination, but the murmurs grow louder and clearer, almost as if the walls themselves are speaking. David freezes, his heart racing, as he catches a fleeting shadow in the corner of his eye. Panic and confusion overtake him. He stumbles toward the sink, only to find the reflection in the mirror distorted, showing glimpses of the past horrors that took place in his own house. A sudden, inexplicable force knocks him to the floor. For a brief moment, he loses consciousness, as though the spirit of the canal itself is warning him. Shaken, he crawls out into the night, heart hammering and mind reeling. This encounter amplifies his paranoia, reinforcing the idea that unseen forces are intruding upon his life. David returns home after the unsettling encounter at the public toilet, still shaken and uneasy. That evening, Alice prepares dinner and tries to reassure him, but the tension between them is palpable. David's mind, already consumed by the 1902 murder footage and strange occurrences, is quick to interpret normal behavior as suspicious. The next morning, David awakens to find Alice missing. Panic surges through him as he searches the house, calling her name, checking every room, but she is nowhere to be found. Billy, their young son, is frightened and confused, unsure why his mother is gone. David contacts Detective McNamara, who begins to investigate her disappearance. The detective questions David thoroughly, but he conceals his fears about the supernatural instead, focusing on Alice's possible infidelity. As the investigation unfolds, it becomes clear that Alice's disappearance is far more sinister than David had imagined. Soon after, her body is discovered in the canal behind their house, shocking David and confirming his worst fears. The revelation leaves him grief-stricken and guilt-ridden, feeling responsible for not noticing the danger sooner. This traumatic event pushes David further into obsession with the canal and the dark history of his home. Haunted by visions and memories, he becomes determined to understand the connection between Alice's death and the century-old murders, setting the stage for his increasingly desperate and paranoid actions. The stage is now set for his deepening obsession with historical murders. David's grief evolves into a dangerous obsession, convinced that the tragic events of the past are somehow connected to his own life. Returning to the film archive, he spends long hours examining the century-old reels, pausing repeatedly on frames that depict the horrifying deaths of the family. Each replay intensifies his fear, and he begins to notice eerie similarities between the old house in the footage and his current home. David starts taking photographs of the footage, trying to document every detail as evidence of a supernatural link. The line between reality and imagination blurs. This fixation sets the stage for the terrifying events during his video chat with Billy. David's obsession with the 1902 murders and the mysterious events in his home reaches a new intensity. One evening, he tries to maintain a connection with his son Billy through a video chat while Billy is staying at a hotel with his nanny Sophie. The interaction begins normally, but David notices something unsettling in the background of the feed. A faint, shadowy figure moves behind Billy, its form almost indistinct yet clearly out of place. His heart races as he realizes this figure is not human, and it seems to mimic the horror captured in the old film footage. David calls out to Billy and Sophie, but they are oblivious to the presence. deepening his sense of isolation. Panic and fear grip him. He becomes convinced that a supernatural entity is targeting his family. Unable to wait, David rushes to the hotel, navigating the dark streets of Dublin with a growing sense of dread. When he arrives, he frantically searches for Billy and Sophie, convinced that the unseen force could harm them at any moment. Arriving at the hotel, he finds Sophie, the nanny, trying to keep Billy calm and safe. In his fear-driven state, David misinterprets normal actions as signs of danger. Believing that locking them away is necessary, he forcibly confines Sophie and Billy in a small closet, insisting it is for their safety. Sophie pleads with him, trying to reason that no threat exists inside the hotel, but David's mind is consumed by the past horrors and the canal's sinister presence. This violent and erratic episode signals a complete unraveling of David's rational mind, blurring the line between reality and the supernatural. As David's obsession with the past murders grows more dangerous, he involves his colleague Claire in his quest to uncover the truth. He persuades her to watch the developed 16mm footage with him, claiming it may reveal answers about the supernatural forces haunting his home. Initially skeptical, Claire observes the reel carefully, noting the 1902 murders and the eerie similarities to David's current life. As the film plays, the atmosphere in the room becomes increasingly tense. The shadows in the corners seem to stretch unnaturally, and an oppressive chill fills the air. Suddenly, a ghostly figure emerges from the footage itself, manifesting as a spectral presence in the room. Claire screams, realizing that the apparition is no mere illusion but a tangible, threatening force. David, horrified and powerless, witnesses the spirit attack Claire. Claire's death is swift and terrifying, leaving David shaken to his core. The encounter confirms that the supernatural force he has feared is real, and that it targets those who attempt to investigate the past. Grief, guilt, and fear consume David as he realizes the deadly consequences of his obsession. Claire's fatal encounter propels him into even greater desperation. Following Claire's horrifying death, David's world unravels completely. Haunted by grief and guilt, he becomes increasingly frantic, desperate to protect his young son Billy from the same malevolent forces that have already claimed lives. David discovers a hidden tunnel beneath his house, an old passage leading toward the canal. Convinced that this secret route may provide safety, he grabs Billy and flees into the dark, narrow corridor. The tunnel is cold, damp, and disorienting, shadows twisting around them as though alive. Detective McNamara, aware of the dangers surrounding David and his family, pursues them through the tunnel, determined to prevent further tragedy. Every step David takes is filled with tension. He fears that the supernatural entity is still present, ready to strike. Billy clings to his father, terrified, while David navigates the maze-like passage, urgency pushing him forward. Strange noises echo from the walls, whispering voices that blur the line between memory and reality. The chase becomes a test of survival and resolve, with David forced to confront his own obsession and the consequences of past mistakes. As they emerge near the canal, David's desperation peaks. He understands the danger but is determined to ensure Billy's safety, even at the risk of his own life. This flight through the tunnel sets the stage for the tragic conclusion, where the canal itself becomes both a physical and symbolic point of finality. David emerges from the hidden tunnel with Billy, exhausted, frightened, and desperate. The canal lies before them, dark and still, a reflection of the horrors that have unfolded in his life. Detective McNamara catches up, guiding them to safety, but the weight of the past hangs heavy. David, consumed by guilt over Alice and Claire's deaths and haunted by the malevolent presence tied to the 1902 murders, steps toward the canal. In a final act of self-sacrifice, he ensures Billy is safe with the detective, pushing him away from the water. David's connection to the supernatural force becomes undeniable. Shadows swirl, the air chills, and the canal itself seems to pull him under. He disappears beneath the dark surface, leaving Billy shaken, but alive. In the aftermath, Billy is taken into the care of his grandmother, though the trauma remains. Alone in the canal's reflection, David's spirit lingers, a spectral echo of the past horrors intertwined with the present. The film concludes with a haunting suggestion that the canal holds a permanent grip on those who encounter its darkness. Billy, forever marked by these events, glimpses a figure resembling his father, a reminder that some bonds, especially those entangled with tragedy and the supernatural, cannot be severed. The tragic conclusion ties together the century-old murders, the haunting of David's family, and the relentless, malevolent force that inhabits the canal, leaving a chilling impression of inevitability and loss. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more in-depth recaps and reviews. Until next time, stay curious and keep exploring the hidden truths in every story.